Today on this James the Bike Guy, we're checking out a adventure vehicle dream. Something from a company called Salsa that is set up to be able to do whatever you want, wherever you want in the winter. That's right, we're checking out the Salsa Mukluk. This is an aluminum fat bike with micro shift advent components, and we're gonna go into the features and designs of this bike, talk a bit about who and what it's for, and then of course, we'll close it out with exactly what it weighs. So if this kind of thing is interesting to you, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and let's check out this bike. Salsa's known for making some real fun adventure mountain bikes as well as gravel and road bikes that are super capable and do a wide range of things. And what we're checking out here is their Mukluk, which is their adventure-ready version of a fat bike. So Salsa also has their Bear Grease, which is a much more performance or fat bike racing oriented adventure bike. But this one is really designed for you to be able to get out and go basically anywhere that you want to. And the Mukluk will come in two different frame styles, either a carbon fiber or an aluminum version. The one we're checking out here is aluminum, so you can see we've got nice alloy welds on it. It does have a combination of internal and external cable routing. It's got routing for a dropper seat post in the future, and then the head tube itself runs an 1.1 to 1.5 inch head tube going down to their bear paw fork. The bear paw fork is the same one they use on the Bear Grease, and you'll see it's got the 3 mounts on side of it, as well as the 15 by 150 millimeter through axle. And then the frame is going to have threaded bottom bracket, and it goes back to a really neat mechanism for the rear dropouts. So this is a 12 by 197 through axle rear end, so nice setup there. And what's really neat about this dropout is it's adjustable. So this adjustable dropout has 2 bolts up here and down there, and you'll notice a horizontal channel that'll actually allow this to slide fore and aft. And then you've got a small little adjusting screw to help keep everything aligned. But what this allows for is 17 millimeters of movement in the rear end of the bike. And the thing with that 17 millimeters of movement is where some of the adventure-ready stuff comes in. So this frame in a 26-inch wheel is capable of running a 3.8 to 4.8 inch tire. In a 27.5, you can run 3.0 to 4.0 tires, and then you can adjust it to fit 2.3s to 3.0s on a 29-inch wheel. And that combination, both with the nice bear paw fork with lots of room and that adjustable rear geometry, allows you to dial that in. Now, also on the geometry front, this bike's going to be set up with a 69-degree head tube angle, a seat tube angle of 73 degrees, a chainstay length of 440 to 457 depending on position, and a bottom bracket drop of 63 millimeters. And those numbers probably sound fairly steep, and that's to be expected on a bike like this. Being adventure ready means that this is likely going to be used on some packed snow, long adventures, things like that. And those angles being a little more conservative than what you'd see on a trail bike is preferred for that style of riding, especially with the slower speeds and the likely loaded weight that would be on the bike. Diving into components on the Advent version of this bike, of course, means it's going to have microshift Advent, as Salsa aptly named for their bike. And microshift Advent is a 1-by style drivetrain. That means there's 1 ring up front on the crankset, and then as you go to the back, it's going to have 10 speeds in this super wide range cassette. And the other neat thing about it is the derailleur itself will be clutched, which is going to help keep everything nice and quiet while you're on the trail. So right now the clutch is turned off, which means the cage for the rear derailleur can move around quite a bit. But you'll notice there's a switch here, much like the Shimano setup, that allows you to adjust a ratcheting mechanism. So take a listen here. And that ratcheting mechanism is going to help keep everything nice and snug. And then it's going to drive the chain through an 11 to 48 tooth cassette. So super wide cassette, which then drives forward to the Samox crankset, which has a 30 tooth narrow wide chain ring. Samox crankset runs a 24 millimeter spindle through that threaded bottom bracket, and slowing the bike down is some Tektro M275 hydraulic disc brakes. So these disc brakes operate on this mineral oil system. So you've got a brake lever here, master cylinder up there, and then it's going to drive down to the wheels where you've got a 160 millimeter rotor on both the front and the rear, as well as a 2-piston hydraulic caliper. The cockpit of the bike is set up with some aluminum componentry. So here we've got a nice wide race face Chester 35 handlebar. This 35 handlebar has a 20 millimeter rise to it. It's 780 millimeters in width, and then it's connecting to the fork steerer via the Salsa guide stem. 4-bolt faceplate to it, 1.125" connection to the fork, as well as the 35 millimeter bar clamp. Rolling to the back is a WTB Volt saddle mounted up on an alloy guide seat post. This is a 31.6 millimeter seat post, and it's going to be rigid and set up, so basically no drop here, but of course you can adjust it with this bolt-on clamp. But the neat thing is the bike is set up to be able to run a dropper, so that could be a nice upgrade in the future, especially for some thick snow powder where you might want to be able to drop that seat out of the way for when you come to a stop and make it easier to get on and off of the bike. The Salsa Mukluk rolls on some super fat 45 North tires. These 45 North tires are a 26 by 4.6 width. This is the Dillinger 5, which you can see is just an absolutely massive tire. And what's neat with this particular tire, aside from the awesome looking gum wall to it, is this tire is going to have some nice directional knobs on the side. This is great for side hilling, especially on loose snow and things like that. It keeps the bike from sliding off. But then you're going to see lots of lower ramped tread knobs going across, as well as a bit of a paddle design through the center. And then each of these has a small dimple. And what that is for is so that you can actually install a stud, so a nice carbide tip stud into there, and those studs are going to help grip, especially on ice and things like that. And then those tires are mounted up on a set of Sunringley Mulefoot 80 rims. This is a 80 millimeter wide rim. It is tubeless ready, although it doesn't come with tubeless tape installed. But what's pretty neat about it is it runs the Sunringley HRC hubs. So these are through axle hubs both on the front and the rear, but they're among some of the strongest out there to help hold up to the abuse that fat bikes have. And what's interesting is because fat bikes have so much tire and so much grip, they oftentimes can be a bit abusive to some of your wheel and drivetrain components, because those components get no slip. It's not going to slide out when you're climbing because the thing has so much grip. So it's nice to see they've got a bulletproof set of hubs on this bike. The actual weight of the Salsa Mukluk Deor comes in and weighs 33.42 pounds. Thanks for watching this video on the Salsa Mukluk. This alloy fat bike is pretty interesting and definitely adventure ready, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it down in the comment section below. While you're doing that, be sure to click the subscribe button and feel free to browse the channel to see other videos like this to check out as well.